All right, we'll give another minute and then we'll get started. Okay, hello everybody and welcome to our webinar titled BeCrop as a Product Development Tool. Today we're going to talk about different approaches in validating biological products for agriculture. I'm John Appel, I'm the commercial head for Biomakers in North America. For those of you that might be new to our company, Biomakers decodes soil biology. We do that by combining advanced genomics, understanding of microbial networks, and machine learning to provide insights on soil functionality. I'm joined here today by Robin Ross of AgNexus Consulting, representing TrueAlgae, and Leon Pratchler, CEO of Humaterra. Starting with you, Robin, would you mind quickly introducing yourself and giving a high-level overview of TrueAlgae?
Sure. As John said, my name's Robin Ross. My background is plant pathology, specifically focusing on microbiology. And we do help TrueAlgae with their product development and market positioning. TrueAlgae is a company that grows microalgae for their metabolites. So these would be metabolites that are produced during photosynthesis. So it's not really an algae company. They don't sell algae. They're simply using algae to produce metabolites.
Great, thanks, Robin.
Hi, I'm Leon Pratchler and the CEO of Humaterra, and I just recently joined within the last year and a half the company, and was intrigued by the fact that we're able to see results, crop results from the natural microbiome. So our company is essentially harnessing the power of a natural microbiome that's developed through the microbial process in composting. And we use matured compost in the biome in that to make a ready-to-use pellet for broadacre agriculture, for reclamation, and for the yard and garden space. And yeah, we've been going since 2016, and 2022, 2023 is going to be really our first year of commercial scale development and expansion. And we're looking at great things in partnerships with using the BeCrop tool.
Fantastic, super interesting technologies. Looking forward to hearing more about how you guys have approached product development. Maybe starting with some challenges for biological manufacturers. There are several that we're all faced with. Number one is validating and verifying product performance. In other words, what effect does a product have? How does it do what it does? Number two is that field trials specifically are expensive and time consuming. Oftentimes, yield alone is not enough to draw deep enough insights about a product and its effects. And number three is differentiating products to consumers, which in our case is farmers, in a somewhat crowded marketplace. And so how can we use our knowledge to better position these products and make them more, enable better outcomes for them? So at Biomakers, our solution to these challenges is a product we call BeCrop Trials. So in BeCrop Trials, we apply our soil biology analytics to assess product effects within the soil. Oftentimes, this allows input companies to assess and evaluate disease risk and management, look at opportunities for yield improvements, understand variables affecting input performance, and assessing biological effects across both locations and over time. In a BeCrop trial, we're looking at an application compared to a control. So in terms of process, we collect replicated samples in both control and treatments, or to be treated blocks, before an application in order to establish a baseline. Then over time, we continue to sample those blocks at predetermined time points to assess impact and effect of those products over time. And the result of that is a complete assessment of biological functional changes in the soil as a result of that application. So starting with the summary, those reports will note the most notable and statistically significant effects. And then a detailed analysis will follow, which includes changes in soil quality, biocontrol, stress, hormone production, and nutrient cycling capability, comparing the treatment against control in each of those categories. So maybe Robin, handing it over to you, would you please share with us your interesting case study here?
Sure. So metabolites, or small molecules, those are kind of an up and coming active ingredient. Unfortunately, they're really hard to work with because they're very tiny. They're hard to identify exactly even what they are, and even more hard to identify what they do. So they are a big product development challenge. Most people think that they might be signalers to either the plant or possibly the microbiome as at least one of their functions. Next slide, please, they're done. All right. So TrueAlgae is a mixture of algal metabolites. So these would be metabolites that are produced during the photosynthesis process of microalgae. The prior research indicated that it's changing the microbiome. And if you go to the next slide here, John, I'll show you some of that prior research. This was some of the earliest research conducted, and this is an ARM printout. It was conducted by Florida Ag Research. They're called AgNexus now. But what they looked at, right over on the far left column, you can see this, is they looked at the TrueAlgae product with the algae in it and with the algae not in it, and they looked at it at 2 different rates. And then they measured the effect on mycorrhizae levels, total bacteria, fungi, and actinomycetes. And what they found was that there were significant changes, increases in mycorrhizae and total bacteria in the treated, and it didn't matter if the biomass of algae was there. So that's how we knew this truly is a metabolite. We repeated this trial again in tomatoes with very similar results, same thing. So it's changing something about the bacteria. So then we went to biomakers to try to understand, all right, what kind of bacteria and what is the function of the bacteria that's being changed. So we set up 3 different strawberry trials, 2 in Florida, 1 in California. Unfortunately, the California trial showed significant differences between treatments before any treatments were applied, which meant that was a flawed location. That didn't work. But if you go to the next slide, I'll show you the 2 data points from Florida. This is Biomaker's old reporting style. So this is not what your report is going to look like. But so let me explain it. The columns, maybe you can point to these, John, if you don't mind. The 3 columns that say T1 minus T0, those are the time points evaluated. So where he's pointing is the first time point, that was 30 days after treatment, and the second was 60, if you'll point to there we go, 60, and then the third was 90. The Q value there is sort of analogous to a P value, so it indicates statistical significance. And if you go all the way down to the bottom, and you look where the red arrow is, that's indicating that at that third time point, there was a 297% increase in microbes that produce siderophores. And that was statistically significant at 0.21. Siderophores are produced often by pseudomonads, and they are very strong iron chelators. So if you go to the next slide, this was our second strawberry location. So it's set up exactly the same way. And if you again go down to where that red arrow is, you can see there was a 517% increase in that location in microbes that produce siderophores, and that was statistically significant at 0.10. So that began to lead us to believe that one of the main modes of actions of these metabolites is to signal microbes, and actually biomakers identified them as largely Pseudomonas genus that produce siderophores. So the functionality of the product is very likely chelation of iron and making iron more available to the crop. So we set up a series of 3 more trials that we were going to use biomakers to analyze. This time we really put the product to the test. We chose 3 fields in California in almas with high pH, above 8.5. The trees showed severe iron deficiency symptomology. If you'll change the slide, please. So here's the results. We have a different format of the reporting now. You can see we've used biomakers technology for quite a few years. The way this is set up, and maybe you can point to it, John, the 3 locations are on the right-hand side. The next farther, there we go, there we go. Those are the 3 fields and the data from the 3 different locations. Notice I pointed out at the bottom siderophore production. Again, this is microbes that produce siderophores. The first field was 178% increase in microbes that do that. The second field, 51%, and the third field, 193%. So we're seeing the same results again, even though if you look at that second location right down the middle, that looks like there's not even a microbe anywhere in that soil. That one, you could probably guess that one might need some compost. It needs your product, Leon. That's what they need to do there. But again, this is verifying that this product consistently is influencing microbes that produce siderophores. And biomakers did identify probably the most likely microbes performing that function for us. Okay, next slide, please. So then we actually took this to the field and began to test it to see, does it really do the thing that biomakers is predicting it would do? Because that's the proof in the pudding. Well, the almond trials showed visual resolution of IDC symptoms. We initiated another study in strawberries in Yuma, Arizona under high pH soils. Strawberries are great indicator plants for iron deficiency. Showed better resolution of iron deficiency than the fertility standard, a product called Ferroline. And then this past year, we initiated studies in Minnesota. This was done actually in a grower's field, and it's iron deficiency chlorosis in soybeans. The standard treatment for that is normally a product called Soyagreen, and the grower had used that for years and was so concerned that he would actually lose his crop if he didn't apply his normal iron to that field, that he wouldn't have a untreated standard. So the whole field has Soyagreen on it. But with iron deficiency chlorosis, the problem is normally not that there's not iron in the soil. It's that the plant cannot get it. So the control there on your right is Soyagreen. The TrueSolum treated there on your left is Soyagreen plus TrueSolum, which signaled and activated the microbes that chelate that iron to get it into the plant. So you can see wonderful visual differences there. If you'll go to the next slide, John, I'll show you some close-ups. There you go. The one on the right is just Soyagreen by itself. And then the plants on the left there were treated with Soyagreen plus TrueSolum to signal and activate the microbes that are actually going to help get that iron into the plant. And notice there's no chlorosis symptomology at all on those soybeans. So, you know, this was a very good product development tool because initially we knew we had some metabolites. We knew it influenced bacteria and mycorrhizae, and that's all we knew. Without biomakers technology, it would have been years of kind of trial and error and looking at crops and just trying to figure it out with our own brain. Their sequencing and AI technology was right on target to direct the development of this product.
Really fascinating example, Robin. Super fascinating trends and really interesting to see the evolution of your knowledge over time, and also interesting to see the evolution of the BeCrop reports. So appreciate that. In case any questions are sparked by Robin, just a little bit of housekeeping. There's a chat box. If anybody has a question, you can type it in the chat box, and we'll try to address it before the end of the session here. Thank you, Robin.
Sure.
Leon, if I can hand it over to you.
Sure, great, thanks, John. Yeah, as I said before, we're a company that is producing a natural microbiome out of a matured composted material. And the concept started with the fact that we all know that compost is beneficial to the soil. The microbial activity in it is beneficial in the soil. Typically, people use extremely high rates of compost as a nutrient amendment, not necessarily taking value of the biological benefit of it. So the result of that is there's very high application rates. It's expensive to transport across the country. Not all compost is created equally. Some is far better than others. Some, some is wet, some is dry, but it's all expensive to apply at high rates. And that's really limited the uptake in broadacre agriculture around the world, certainly in Western Canada. So there's a lot of livestock operations, there's a lot of city waste streams, there's wood waste streams, but none of it is in a format that is actually easy to use. And almost all of it that gets applied to a field is applied for the nutrient amendment, not the biological portion of it. So Humaterra started with the concept of fostering and developing and understanding what the results come from the biological portion of naturally matured compost. And really the concept was to mimic what was happening in the native soil floors, forest floors, decades, centuries ago prior to human involvement, and try to get back to that natural biological state. And so what we have developed is a compressed pellet that can be easily applied through modern commercial agriculture, can be blended with fertilizer. So the logistics part of it really is working good. Now we have to try to determine what is it actually doing and why are we seeing crop results in the field. So we conducted a trial here very close to our site in northern Saskatchewan, north central Saskatchewan, and it's taking a field scale, a quarter section field. It's 160 acres of land, and we split it into quadrants. And we grew canola on it 2 years ago and barley on it last year, and we're back into canola again this year. But if you want to go to the next slide, we'll show some of the interesting results that we've seen. So essentially what we're doing is we're taking the natural biome. We aren't focusing on one single strain or species. We're not focusing on fungus. We're not focusing on bacteria. We're trying to get a consortium, a complete consortium that can handle or that can mimic that soil flora and restoring soil functionality. So next slide, please. So this is our multi-year stack trial that we had results in. So in 2021, we split the field into two quadrants, so the east half and the west half. And this was canola that was treated, or that was grown on that crop. So on the east part, we had inoculated the soil with our H-Start brassica inoculant, and the west block was a control. So next slide, please. So 2021 here was a drought. This area that we were in, we had a little more rainfall than other areas, so we had not bad crops. But the results that we saw were yield response. We didn't really know why we had yield response, but we had a very good yield response. So the untreated control area on the west side yielded 42.5 bushels per acre. The east side was 47. And canola is a very high value cash crop, and that's a significant yield increase. If we can get in that, close to 10% yield increase, it's very significant for agriculture in Canada. Next slide, please. So we followed that up with barley that we grew last year on it, and instead of treating the east half and the west half, we treated the south half and left the north half untreated. So essentially we had this field broken up into quadrants. So we had 4 quadrants. One was untreated both years. One was planted to canola and treated in 2021, not 2022. One was treated both years, once for canola, once with barley, and one was only treated 1 year for barley in 2022. So we really want to try to have this ongoing project where we can track and manage and see the differences between treated versus untreated. And if we do get a yield response, we can look at the impact. So is it root development? Is it yield? What is it? And then we can try to tie that back. So next slide, please. So the interesting results on the barley crop we had last year were very, very indicative and followed nicely the treated or the inoculated versus the control. So as we showed in our initial slides with canola, we had almost a 10% yield increase on canola inoculated in the first year and not. When we look at the barley crop treated, the control block had a yield of 86.2 bushels per acre, and subsequently, as we increased, got closer to inoculation, and then had the double inoculation on the one quadrant that we inoculated both in 21 and 22. Again, we're getting not quite 10%, but we're getting close to a 10% yield increase. And it's really showing the stacked impact of subsequent inoculations on this field. And this is a pretty homogeneous field. We didn't see these yield responses in prior years prior to inoculation, but we're starting to see these yield increases. And now it's a matter of why are we getting them? We dig up roots and we're seeing better development in roots, we're seeing better yield increases, but now why is that? So next slide, please, John. So this is a really a very visual impact statement, I guess, of what we can see from successive years of application. And it does not look like it, but this is the same amount of width of row that was dug up within that barley field. And they were random across the field. This is just a snapshot of a couple of samples. But if you look at the root and the straw development or the plant development, and this is post-harvest, of course, if you look at that development on the quadrant that was treated 2 years in a row, in that same root mass we had, or in that same width of row, we had 5.2 grams of dried root mass. The uninoculated portion, we had 1.5 grams of dried root mass. That is a massive, massive increase in plant development and root development, and that happened from 2 subsequent years of application. Again, why is that happening? So next slide. So this is where it really becomes an interesting thing. We've often felt or have considered that this is a nutrient response. Essentially, it's nutrients. There really can't be much else. We're increasing nutrient cycling. We're having a big impact on nutrients. And to a certain degree, yeah, we are, but it's not a huge nutrient response. We don't have, so this is the biomaker's report, and it allows us to look at micronutrient and macronutrient changes in biological activity that makes those nutrients available. Yeah, there's an impact, not a massive impact, probably not enough to have that much of a change in root development. So next slide, please. So here's where it becomes interesting. We start to look at hormone production, in specific auxin production. If we look at plant hormones that are associated with increased root development, we look at the control, not treated either year, we see a lower level of auxin production. And as we get up into subsequent years, up until the treated 2 years in a row, we see a pretty significant elevated level of auxin production associated with biological activity in that soil. So is that now allowing us to say, okay, we know that we have a plant response, we know that we have a yield response, and we can visually see the root development, and we can measure that root development. Now it's not probably it isn't resulting in a result from nutrient cycling. It's probably a result from auxin production, increased biological activity associated with auxin production. So it's really been important for us to understand when we're talking to our customers and fertilizer dealers and the industry in general. Now we can say we think we know at least one of the functions that we're having an impact from this broad spectrum inoculant. Maybe nutrient, but maybe it isn't, and this is an answer. So next slide, please. So this is a very, very interesting slide with regards to Alternaria. So soil-borne pathogens, this is one snapshot. We're starting to see, when we do further subsequent analysis on many different samples, we're starting to see this trend as well. And this, if we look at the control, so uninoculated 2 years in a row, significantly high levels of Alternaria in the soil. When we look at all 3 treatments, they have a very significantly reduced level of soil-borne Alternaria. The inoculated both in 2021 and 2022 had the lowest level. So now we start to put a story together. So do we have reduced pathogens in the soil? Well, in this case, yes. Do we have increased hormone production that leads to better root development? In this case, yes. So next slide, please. Oh, sorry, that was it. So, I guess that is, that's really starting to tell the story, and we can break it down into bite-sized pieces that we can start to focus in and look at. So it'll allow us to increase our product development. It'll allow us to have better consistent product development, and then see the cause and effect of what broad scale inoculation does in farm soils in Western Canada.
That's great, Leon. Thanks for sharing that example on Humaterra. It's super interesting to note the differences between the products, right? With the TrueAlgae product and the metabolite approach, signaling siderophore production, and the Humaterra product really driving auxin production and some disease response, right? I think insights like that enables a much more sophisticated conversation with the end customer on what these products actually do and how they work. And that's different versus what's been historically possible in the industry. So it's great to highlight those specific examples. We've got a couple of questions for the presenters here, and then after we get through those, we'll see if there's anything from the audience. So maybe Leon, we'll start with you. You first on the first question. We talked a little bit about this already, but in what specific ways has the BeCrop technology helped you with your product development process? From start to commercialization, let's say.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very good point. We're relatively new to the BeCrop Trials. We've only had, we've had a year. But as we said in that in the previous slides that I talked about, it really is allowing us to have an educated idea of what we're actually doing and an educated discussion within the industry. So it's helping us to understand the fact that if there's an opportunity to maybe handle our inbound material differently to get a different result, we can maybe do that. That's going to be further development down the line. But we really want to focus on having consistent product and consistent results. But the BeCrop Trials allow us to have an educated discussion and conversation within the industry so that we sound like we know what we're talking about. Because really prior to this, we knew we had results. We knew we had results in several different areas. We just didn't know what they were. So immediately then, you don't have the credibility within industry to say, well, this stuff works. Oh, okay, how does it work? Well, we don't know how it works. Now we do. And that's a very, very important tool.
Excellent. Robin, what's your take on this one?
I would say that over the past years, there's been an explosion in natural products, from biostimulants to microbial products, metabolites, all kinds of technologies, and they all had very similar claims. They would show big plants and show you some kind of 5 to 10% yield increase or something like that. And it was almost impossible to know what was the exact motive, what was the mode of action behind these products, and how can you differentiate your product from the plethora of other ones that were entering into the market space. So I honestly think that BeCrop Trials is allowing some very precise differentiation between all of these products, or, in the case of TrueAlgae, their product at least, they can say, this is our product, this is what it does, and this is what you can expect to see in the field. And that's very much differentiated from somebody that's just improving soil health. But they can't tell you exactly what that improvement in soil health actually does or why that means anything.
Right. Yeah, great feedback. Robin, to piggyback on that, when you set up a BeCrop trial like this, what are some of the best practices that maybe somebody listening should consider when planning and executing one of these trials?
Sure. Well, when I gave the initial presentation and was talking about strawberries, and I said we set up 3 locations, one of them we had to throw out because there were significant differences between the microbiome before the product was ever applied. Well, this kind of analysis is not cheap. It is kind of expensive. And so make sure that you're choosing appropriate locations with no known differences between the fields that you're choosing to sample or the plots that you're choosing to sample. So plot uniformity would be a very important one, in my opinion. A lot of times when you're first starting out, you're unsure of what time interval you should be testing this. For example, is your product going to show a bigger difference 15 days after treatment, or 30 days after 40 or 45 days? A lot of times it seems to happen between that 15 and 30 day interval. But if you've never done it before, spend the money, take the time to at least do 3 different time intervals so that you don't miss something very important. So I would say those are 2 of the most important things: uniformity of your plots, make your initial testing, spend the money to have an actual really good look at it. Later on, you can narrow your trial design a little bit if you know when you're most likely to see the greatest differences between treatments. So those are 2 that I would point out.
Very, very relevant. Thanks, Robin. Leon, how about your perspective? I mean, you showed a couple of interesting designs, looking at the kind of the durability of that application over time. What else do you think would a company should consider here?
I think have a plan. Understand, do you want to have a 30-day time window? Do you want to have a 90-day time window or a 5-year time window? And if you want to have a 5-year successive application and look at the change in the soil, make sure that you understand that at the very beginning, so you're not moving plots year after year. And we got caught in that a little bit too, because we didn't really understand how long of a time horizon we wanted to have in our trials. But you can't move the ground that you've already inoculated. You have to stay within that plot and have a trial design that allows you to really extend and match the time horizon that you want to get your results in. Without a plan, it becomes extremely expensive, because, you know, and not in terms of just cash, but in terms of time. And you can't get a growing season back. So if you don't have a proper plan at the beginning of the season, you may waste a complete year of research by changing your mind halfway through.
Right. Yeah. Sometimes difficult to think about think beyond the season ahead, but have a multi-year plan for those specific plots, so to speak. Okay. Leon, you mentioned the ability now to have an educated discussion on these products in the marketplace. In what ways have these trials helped you differentiate these products commercially, and what's the impact on grower adoption?
It's been good. Really, it's been our entrance into the broader scale acceptance in broadacre agriculture, certainly in Western Canada. And again, there's many competing products, and many of them have claims that are similar to ours, frankly. And they may very well have those similar types of results. The issue, though, is, as Robin had said, we don't really know what's causing the results. So if you can we understand the modes of action and the pathways to success within that product and what is actually happening when you apply it, instantly you have the ear of the person that you're talking to. The audience then understands that, okay, this company, this group has done some background work, and their claims are based by scientific fact, not just by speculation. And that's a huge differentiating factor in the marketplace. Just the fact that we can have educated conversations within industry, with agronomy groups, with scientists, it's been a huge boost for us.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Robin, how about you?
Yeah, I would agree with that, Leon. It is well-respected technology, even if you're presenting your data at scientific conferences. If you say this data came through biomakers, that's well-respected. And so I think that helps differentiate products, just the reputation and the quality of the technology. But I would also want to go back to what I was saying earlier, is there's just so many products that are making some kind of a soil health claim. And so it's a very foggy, crowded market. If you can actually get right down to, we're influencing soil health in this very specific way, here's how you use it, and even more, here's the likely microbes that are driving this. You've gotten so specific now that you're outside of the fog, and you do know how to position your product properly against a whole lot of other products, and you know where to put it. You know what kind of field you ought to be putting it in. Like, take the example of the TrueAlgae product. If the target is iron deficiency, that right there just defined what that market should be and where the biggest sales opportunities likely lie.
Super interesting. Thanks, Robin. Robin, continuing with you, what do you see as some of the most significant effects or trends or changes observed from using the BeCrop trials to analyze the TrueAlgae product?
Besides the 3 different trial formats, that was one big difference, 3 different trial formats, but y'all are continuing to improve your reporting to make it more understandable and usable. You've highlighted
I think the major thing was the siderophore effect, the siderophore production. Were there any others that you noted?
Sure. There were several others. I don't know if y'all remember the almond trials, but the little blue kind of bar, the swoop that was in 2 of the locations, indicated that there's probably some effects on microbes that help crops tolerate stress as well. So, those are trends that allude to what are some next steps in product development. can we actually take this photosynthetic metabolite production, tweak it around a little bit, and then begin to accentuate some of these other aspects of what the product does. And BeCrop Trials is a great way to look at, well, did we succeed in that? Let's say we add heat, or we add more light or less light or something like that to the production of these metabolites with microalgae. That's absolutely going to change those metabolites. BeCrop Trials are the perfect way to say, well, how did it change it? And what does that change? Do we have a new product now? So it can possibly develop a whole new product line, you know, a whole platform of products.
Yeah, interesting perspective. Thanks, Robin.
Mm-hmm.
Leon, any other observations from your side that you've gleaned from the BeCrop Trials?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is a shift of mindset from the common held philosophy that compost is a nutrient amendment. What we're really starting to see is that it is not necessarily, you know, applied at proper rates and really fostering that biological development within there. We can use it as a very good soil, a broad spectrum soil inoculant. And things like stress adaptation, salt tolerance, auxin production, soil pathogen shift, those are all very, very important things that, you know, a couple of years ago, I don't think many people within the industry would have actually said are credible statements. We're starting to see now and prove through DNA testing that those are actual effects that are coming from a broad spectrum inoculation, of which the common held philosophy was that it's a nutrient amendment. And I think we're starting to see that maybe that isn't true, or partially only true.
So if I could comment to Leon, I'd say that's super interesting, Leon. And now you actually have the ability to maybe even change how you're doing your composting and get different effects, add microbes, you know, do all kinds of different things to use this technology to even further improve your product.
Right, and looking at gaps that are potentially there. So, you know, not saying that nutrient efficiency or solubilization is not an important aspect, it certainly is, but maybe through handling the material, maybe some other different processes or practices or methods, we can enhance that. So instead of trying to focus on areas that maybe we have lots of effect on and impact in, maybe we now can dedicate our resources to areas that there could be gaps in this natural microbiome. And for product development and future opportunities, that's a huge thing for us to know where to look and where to go next.
Great, thanks, guys. Okay, so as we look at these different locations, Robin, I'll go back to you to start. As you look across these different locations and these different trials, what did you learn about where, you know, in terms of geography, where a product might, or geography or crop, where a product works well and where it might not, which is equally important, I would argue.
Yeah, I would say this is not completely solved. We don't fully understand the mystery of the microbes and why they assimilate, why they tend to associate with plants and perform certain functions. The traditional thinking has been that if you have a microbe that, let's say, solubilizes phosphorus or something like that, or a consortium of microbes that does that, you would not put it into a field that has plenty of phosphorus, because why would a microbe need that? Why would the plant associate with microbes that perform that function if it already has plenty of that particular, has plenty of phosphorus? I don't think it's as straightforward as that. So I really think this question is still a bit of a mystery. We could certainly use Biomaker's technology to help kind of narrow it down. But surprisingly, in some of the fields where we used Biomaker's technology, like the Yuma strawberries, where we saw clear visual resolution of iron deficiency chlorosis, better than the iron standard, Fairlane. It has to be the microbes doing it, but somehow it didn't get picked up in the Biomaker's report. It didn't show any difference in siderophore producing microbes. I'd say there's still microbes doing that, but there's some kind of a glitch in our understanding of when and how and exactly how all this is working. In other examples, like the almonds, beautifully, every one of those showed exactly what we expected it to show. So I think there's actually a bit of a mystery here to further define and refine when and how these tests are going to show us the expected result.
Yeah, couldn't agree with that more. And I think it takes a couple of layers deeper understanding about impact of soil types and environmental factors like climate and everything like that, where the microbiome changes depending on those factors, right?
Very true. And I think you guys have done an awesome job at taking a first good shot at it. And from there, we are going to peel away more and more and more and more layers to try to refine this thing. We know now more than we've ever known before. I certainly would say that. And a lot of that is this kind of technology.
Absolutely. Leon, over to you. What anything you learned about geography of crop, where the product works well and where it might not?
Yeah, and I think to echo Robin's statement, what we're seeing in areas or with producers that have extremely high applied fertility rates, we're not seeing the response from the nutrient mobilizers. And again, to Robin's point, if they don't need to do the work, then they're not doing the work. So so we're seeing a general trend in that. One of the things that we are learning is that the more we learn, the more we realize that we have to learn. And I think just by looking at this data and seeing all the questions and different avenues and areas that we need to research, it is becoming very evident that there is so much more happening below the soil than anybody knows. And that's a pretty common statement, I think, across the board. And we've got so much upside in this entire area once we can read what's happening and then know where to go from there. So that's my biggest takeaway, is that we have a lot more to learn, and we've come a long ways, but there's so much more to go.
Right.
Great.
You know, John, I think another good example of this just in general is if you look at the, if you remember back to the almond report that I showed you, it also showed increases in microbes that help crops tolerate stress. Well, California is pretty stressful. It's like 100 and something degrees, whatever, in the valley where those almonds were grown. The crop needs those microbes to perform that function, and TrueAlgae seem to be signaling them. But if you looked at the strawberry reports where they were grown in Florida, there's plenty of water available. It was not during the heat of the summer. No changes in those kinds of microbes. So it is going to end up being complex, and you're more likely to see the results that you want if the crop actually needs those kinds of microbes that perform that function.
Yep. Yes, great comments, Robin. Okay, maybe one of the final questions here from our side. How has BeCrop impacted return on investment? So we know this is an investment. There's costs involved to run an analysis like this. What, if any, cost efficiencies, so cost savings, revenue gains, or other value have you been able to realize, and how would you quantify return on investment if you've had one? Leon, if we can start with your side. Not an easy question to answer always.
Well, yeah, and I mean, we're pretty early stages in our business cycle, but I think what it's done is it has given us the confidence as an organization to know that there's something here and something that's worth putting further resources into. And so as far as impacting return on investment, those are going to be future gains that we will realize. And right now, today, it's really a matter of just having the understanding that we need to go further and we need to be able to develop this tool. So I think in terms of sales, it has certainly helped gain credibility in the market, as I've mentioned before. In terms of confidence, it's done that, and it allows us to really focus and target our spend right now. And then the return on investment is going to come. You know, we can't hide from the data, good or bad. And I think part of this whole process is understanding that we're going to have positive results, and we need to, and that's great. The more important results are the ones that aren't positive. And I think if we can understand where we're not having an impact, be it on high fertility soils or high applied fertility soils, all right, well, maybe there's an opportunity that's hidden in there someplace. And those things are going to be developed. And it's really going to be up to us as an organization to understand these results and then to maximize the benefit that's coming out of them. But it will definitely be realized within the next 12 to 18 months. Great.
Thanks, Leon. Robin, how about from your side?
Yeah, I'm going to speak to this just from a product development perspective. A lot of the coolest new technologies that I'm seeing enter into the market space are coming from smaller companies that you have a scientist, you have somebody that's come up with something super cool. Unfortunately, they usually don't have the product development budget that some of the bigger companies have. Neither do they have the product development support team, dozens of rapid assays, lots of money put into actually uncovering the mode of action of the product. So they get stuck in this place of, we've got a product, we're seeing nice yield increases, maybe we're seeing roots, we're seeing something, but they still don't understand the mode of action of the product, and they often absolutely don't have the money to do what a bigger company might be able to do in-house. So what Biomaker's technology is doing is giving them the opportunity to actually start to uncover some of the details of the mode of action of these products that influence soil health. So it's kind of a pay for play that allows smaller companies that need this kind of technology to have access to it. Whereas some of the bigger companies, they could at least get the sequencing done. They still probably need your AI, the predictive AI technology that would help them understand it. So everybody needs it. But the smaller companies are the ones that really often don't have that background R&D team and R&D platform to help them understand their mode of action. That would leave them stuck, possibly for years, just making general claims. Oh, look at this yield increase. Oh, look at these greener plants. Or, oh, look at something very vague. And they cannot have a targeted message. That's a huge ROI. That's years of potential wandering around out there in the swamp with vague claims. And allowing them to now have a very targeted message and sell with a very credible targeted message.
Yeah, great perspectives. I like the kind of the commercial take on things and the product development take on things, and that there's value in the knowledge to be gained at an early stage, especially so that's not wasted on trials and I think floundering in the marketplace. And then some of the things you mentioned about commercialization and confidence with the customer base and increased sales and things like that. Really nice to see both perspectives there.
Yeah, and I'd just like to add, we look at our as a company, our return on investment. I think what we really can't lose sight of is the fact that we can increase return on investment from our customers, from our retail partners. And that's all that matters, frankly. If they have a better return on investment and a targeted approach to how and when they use the product, that's going to come back to us. And I think if we focus on our producers' return on investment, ultimately we're going to benefit from it. And this really is a big and important tool in helping them and helping us, and just forwarding this theory, this concept, and turning it into a legitimate product that we know the results and we have predictable results.
Right. And Leon, if you think about it, the distributors or potential distributors for a lot of these products, they might have a book of 20 products that they think do something kind of similar. This allows you to give them the information to really understand your product and choose yours out of the 20 that they have in their book that they're going like, which one should I pick? Oh, yeah, I don't know the difference.
Cut through the noise.
Yeah, cut through the noise and help your sales folks, your distribution, know the right product to put in the right place.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, last question. What are you most excited about at your company in the coming year, and how do you envision the use of BeCrop Trials to help? Robin, we'll start with you on this one.
Okay, I love that question. That's a great one. I guess the most exciting thing that I'm seeing for TrueAlgae is using algae to produce a whole platform of different kind of algal metabolites that perform different kinds of functions. So, tweak the way that the algae is grown, you're going to get different metabolites, and potentially you have a whole range of different products. So it's like a metabolite platform, and it is going to take technology like BeCrop Trials to be able to help precisely identify what each of these scenarios, what kinds of metabolites, what they're producing, and how they are influencing the microbiome. So
very cool.
A whole product development line. That's what I think is the most exciting.
Yeah, great. How about you, Leon?
Yeah, I think for us, it's going to be transitioning from a discovery to try to find, okay, what are we having an impact on, to proving that out. And if we can in fact actually prove that we have an impact on those key areas that we talk about in stress tolerance and hormone production and so on and so forth, if we can actually prove that out on a large scale, now it's not a speculative statement anymore. It's a proven statement, and we can really take that and have a big impact in the marketplace. And then start to wrap our head around, 5-10 years out, are we going to be able to have an impact, or maybe not even that far, maybe it's a year and a half or 2 years out, on things like soil carbon storage. How do we impact that? How can we have a positive impact on fertility reduction and still maintain or in fact increase yields? I think those things really for me are the most exciting thing, is to go from the proof of concept to speculation to proof. And that'll happen this year, and that is incredibly exciting for us and for the industry in general.
Super exciting. Well, thank you both. You've been battered with questions and answered them very articulately. Appreciate that. We have about 10 minutes exactly, actually, and a bunch of questions from the audience. I'm going to try to pick a couple of these out, and we'll try to handle them one by one. And for anything we can't get to, we'll follow up with an email. One of them is for Leon. What's the rate of application for the Humaterra product?
So we're 35 pounds per acre, and that is a banded application. So it goes down with your seed. It can blend it with starter fertilizer, but it's 35 pounds per acre.
Okay. Another question, maybe Robin, we could start with you on this one. What is the maximum time of action of these products? In other words, what is the frequency of use to keep the microbes active?
I would say that you're going to have to do the trial to find out, because they're just between these two technologies that we talked about, Humaterra and TrueSolem's appeared to be a shorter range, especially, it appeared to be a shorter interval, whereas Leon talked about seeing improvements in the microbiome over years. So I would say that every product's probably going to be different. For TrueSolem, thinking back to the strawberry trial, it looked like it was about 90 days out, showed the maximum, which means we probably should have tested 120, and we might have seen even further growth. But I think every product's going to vary. It's going to all be different.
Great. Leon, how about you? What's the maximum time action of these products? Frequency of use to keep the microbes alive?
Great question. We don't know the answer to that. I mean, our storability in our product is, it's years once it's dried and in good condition. When it gets put into the soil, we don't know. We're seeing stacking efficacy. So multiple successive applications is starting to result in better results. Now, is it 4 years, 5 years, 2 years? We don't know the answer to that. And when we do, we'll let you know.
Great. Next one, I think, is something for me. Do you give us the full list of microorganisms and also the amount of them per analysis? We are able to provide that information, and the easiest way you can get that is to access our digital portal, and we have some really interesting analytical tools where you can look at different species and their relative abundances in those samples. Next one is, what is the temperature min and max to have optimal microbial activity? I'm not sure if that's a product specific question or if that's a general sampling question, but any comments from Robin from your side on that? Temperature min and max to have optimal microbial activity. Is there been anything you found to be the case?
I mean, so that's a very, very broad question. Generally speaking, though, microbes are going to like nice warm weather, but not burning hot weather and not super cold weather. Kind of like you got to just kind of think where they're going to be happy. In the 70s, nice moderate temperatures, I think, is when you're going to see the most microbial growth. If you start hitting situations like maybe in Arizona or California, where your soil temperatures are easily 100 degrees, microbes aren't going to like that very much. Or if you sample them in the winter, they're likely to be dormant. They may be there. You may still pick them up in your technology there, John, but they're going to likely be dormant.
Yeah, that's a great answer. Definitely don't want to let them sit on your dashboard in your truck for a week before sending them in.
Okay, if that's what the question was pertaining to, is how do we handle our sample? Sure, do not drive them around in the dashboard of your pickup truck in the middle of the summer, and then remember a week later you need to go mail those things. That would be bad.
Okay, great. I think another one is from my side. What's the minimum number of samples needed from one field and how big an area? Yeah, I think if we look at a trial like we're talking about here, some of these are going to be in small plot trials. We would typically recommend at least 3 replicates per treatment, so that we can look at these statistically. If we're looking at a commercial field, we typically would suggest three samples per field, again, for that to account for variance. But in some cases, we have customers that are sampling once per zone is how we look at that. So ideally 3, at a minimum 1 in some cases.
Yeah, can I chime in on that one there, John?
Yeah, please.
Okay, this kind of pertains to a question I often hear is, when y'all send sample tubes, these are teeny little tubes. And so people are going to ask this question of, well, my goodness, how many of these teeny little tubes represent my field? So if that's the nature of the question, certainly in small plot trials, what I've asked researchers to do is to take multiple cores from the plot, like 10 of them from a small plot, mix them really, really well in a big bucket, then fill your tube to get as homogeneous a sample from that plot as you can possibly get. Don't think that just one core, one little dig, put it in that tube is going to be representative.
Great point, Robin. That's a much better way to look at it. Okay, next one. Increasing dose rate of products will increase microbial activity or longer lasting activity. I think the question is, will increasing the dose rate of the products increase microbial activity or longer lasting activity? Leon, maybe we can start with you on that. Any dose response to microbial activity that you've seen, or TBD?
More so on it is a lot to be determined, but more so I think the dose response would be on the method of application. So if you can put a small amount well placed into warm, humid soil beside your seed, and it doesn't take very much. If you broadcast apply it in the middle of summer when the sun is beating down on it, you don't incorporate it in the soil, you need a lot of it. So I think that the dose rate is more important in terms of how it's applied and where it is applied, as to oppose the quantity of what's applied to it.
Yeah. I think there's differences in products too, as to how you would answer the question. For a product like a compost, there probably is a dose rate because it's got all kinds of things in there. When you get to a signaling compound, there might not be as much of a dose rate because I don't know if you remember the trials that I showed you that were done by AgNexus. We looked at different rates. A signal is a signal. It didn't seem to particularly matter. So I think it depends on the nature of the technology. There's probably a lower threshold where if you're dealing with a signaling compound, if you haven't reached at least the lowest threshold for the signal to hit the microbes, it may not work. But once the signal is being given, you could go higher and higher and higher, and it probably isn't going to matter that much.
Okay, great. We'll end on this one because there's probably going to be, I think, some good feedback from both Leon and Robin on this one. But will these microbe blends activate other microbes already present on site, or will they compete with each other? Leon, any feedback on that one?
Yeah, and I think, when we go back to the slide that I showed about the soil pathogen shift, so are they competing against each other? Yeah, probably. But what are they out competing? Are they out competing things that are currently in the soil that are maybe soil pathogens? Well, that's a good thing. Are they out competing other microbes? I don't know. We're replacing, or we're trying to augment the natural microbiome, and typically whatever is going to be the most aggressive and survive is going to be the one the ones that need to be there are the ones that need to be there. But we're seeing this general shift, or initial indications of a general shift of that soil pathogen level and of the soil microbiome level. So obviously there's competition going on. For us to know exactly what it is, I can't answer that because there's so many variables involved in it.
I guess I would say that sometimes when you apply a microbial product to the soil, you think you're going to go and do a BeCrop test, and you'll see your product come back out. You'll see higher levels of, whatever microbes is in your product. That isn't necessarily always the case. Sometimes you won't even hardly find your microbes there at all, but you've changed the whole microbiome. So it is a bit of a complex thing that happens. It's a living, the microbiome is a living dynamic system. So it's not like put in this bacillus and get this bacillus back out again. It can change the whole system.
Yeah, and I think just to go to the statement, I think that there's a commonly held opinion, maybe it isn't, but I think there is an opinion that you can't really change the soil microbiome. Whatever's there is what's there. Yeah. We know that's not true. We know that we can change this natural soil microbiome, and it's been changing every time you do anything to the soil. In some cases, there's being introduction of pathogens. In some cases, there's a reduction of pathogens. But the soil microbiome is changing, and it is always changing. And so I think we really need to understand that we can have a positive and a negative impact on it, depending on what route you choose to go. And we feel we have a positive impact on it. You know, Robin does as well. So I think this tool is really proving that out, and there'll be more to come.
Excellent feedback. We're at the top of the hour here, so unfortunately that's all the time we have. There were a few remaining questions that we'll respond to via email or circulate with the presenters here and respond. But Leon and Robin, thank you so much. You've provided some incredible insight into this process and this technology and how it's being utilized. I'm sure the audience really appreciates it. I certainly appreciate it. So thank you very much for sharing that with us today. And hope you both have a great day. But thanks again.
Yeah, thank you, John. Thanks for the invitation.
Thank you.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye.